If you're an entrepreneur, then this advice from a medieval Christian king will shock you. Today, we have access to so many great modern day Christian authors and thinkers. We even have authors like John Maxwell, who probably has more books out on leadership than I've been on earth. But the most valuable Christian leadership advice for us who work in the public is advice that has proved to transform an entire pagan nation within one generation. So meet the wisdom of King Stephen of Hungary. Now, King Stephen was born as a pagan, but he ended up becoming one of Europe's most righteous and loved kings to ever exist in its history. And fortunately for us, he left a brief manual to his son on how to one day grow up and mature into a great king. And even though King Stephen penned a lot of different laws and decrees, just as, the everyday job of being a king, this manual, this letter that he wrote to his son, has been one of the most treasured and most valuable piece of literature that not just he wrote, but any European king has ever written. So how can you apply this wisdom in your daily, personal, and professional life? And can advice from a medieval king actually help you move closer to God more than even some or many of the books that are written today? I'll do my best to highlight 3 key important lessons that will help you overcome mediocrity and grow in your leadership. So before I show you some old words from some old guy in a faraway place, let's take a look at actually who King Stephen was, and let's see why he wrote this manual. While he was a young boy, maybe around 10ish or so, his family converted to the Christian faith, and he ended up becoming a Christian king, the Christian king of Hungary, for 40 long years. He lived a long life and did a lot of good. And so why was he not just a good king, but actually what made him a good Christian king? What made him a role model for us? Here's some of the things that he did. Some quick facts is he chose leaders of the church as his closest advisors, both in his personal and his professional life. He was known to really depend on the clergy and wanted their input. Secondly, is he ordered one church to be built for every 10 towns. He wanted to make sure that as the people in his kingdom were learning about the faith, that they had somewhere within walking distance to go to church. Thirdly, he actually imported clergy from other countries into his kingdom to help evangelize the people. He knew that his kingdom was brand new to the faith. He needed to pull clergy and to import them from other countries to make sure that his people could be educated in the faith. And then also too, what made him a great king is the fact that so many people moved into his kingdom during this time because it was such a prosperous place, it was a moral place. And lastly, it was often that a lot of historians would, around that time, during the medieval time, they would give titles to kings like, oh, Stephen the Great, Stephen the Invincible. But for him, the title that he earned was King Stephen the Most Christian. People always attributed him Christian qualities to his titles instead of just the Conqueror. Now, the reason why he wrote this manual, it was actually written to his son, Emmerich, so that his son would one day be worthy to wear the royal crown. And unfortunately, his son died while his dad was still the ruler, so that didn't happen. This manual, it's 10 short sections. It's about a 5-minute read. It's not that hard. I actually put a link in the description to it. You can go online, read it. It's definitely a worthwhile read. But one thing for sure is that King Stephen was a great Christian statesman, and he spent his entire life making sure that his priorities ultimately were just in line with God's priorities. So let's jump into the contents of this manual. So there are 3 key lessons that I think will be most beneficial to us, and we're going to go over a couple different sections. Just as a quick side note, King Stephen's going to reference the faith being Catholic and Apostolic, and this was a time before there was this division, or before there's all these different divisions in Christianity. So he's not talking about a modern day Catholic, but just a universal ancient use of that term Catholic. So this first part on the faith reads, "My dearest son, if you desire to honor the royal crown, I advise, I counsel, I urge you above all things to maintain the Catholic and Apostolic faith with such diligence and care that you may be an example for all those placed under you by God, and that all the clergy may rightly call you a man of true Christian profession. Failing to do this, you may be sure that you will not be called a Christian or a son of the church. Indeed, in the royal palace, after the faith itself, the church holds second place. First constituted and spread throughout the whole world by his members, the apostles and holy fathers, and though she always produced fresh offspring, nevertheless, in certain places, she is regarded as ancient. However, dear son, even now in our kingdom, the church is proclaimed as young and newly planted, and for that reason, she needs more prudent and trustworthy guardians, lest a benefit which the divine mercy bestowed on us undeservedly should be destroyed and annihilated through your idleness, indolence, and neglect. This is the opening to this whole manual. And the first thing that King Stephen is instill in his son godly motivations. He wants everyone to call him a Christian, to be motivated by any other really virtue, but besides a son of the church. Now, the second lesson we're going to read on the nobility, and this is kind of interesting section, and I think it's most relatable to professionals because he gets into talking about how we relate with one another, especially as a leader. So let's jump into this part. Of these, truly, you should reduce none to servitude, nor call any slave. They should serve you as soldiers, not as slaves. Rule all of them without anger and pride and envy, peacefully, with humility, gently holding ever in your memory that all men are of one condition, and that naught elevates save humility, and nothing casts down save pride and envy. Fearful of this, direct the life of your companions with the rule of virtue, that captured by your love, they may inoffensively adhere to the kingly authority, and that your realm may be wholly at peace. Then these doctrines no noble could ask more liberal, no king more efficacious. So the main point from this one that I think is beneficial to us is to rule and lead with positive qualities. One of the things that he was very particular about was like laying out the negative qualities to avoid, and seeing those negative qualities is a reminder of like how easy it could be, how tempting it is to actually lead with anger, with pride, with envy. It's something that happens subconsciously, and so we have to be aware of that. And he said to also keep in mind the value of other people constantly. And this is a king who, if anyone's going to face temptation to not think that way, it would be him. And so remembering that however many people you lead, whether it's volunteers at church, whether it's a business, always keep in mind that we lead them as soldiers, not as slaves, and to seek elevation only through humility, and most importantly, lead others by our example of virtue. And the last key lessons that we're going to pull from this, it's actually going to be from the very last couple paragraphs. It's very short sections. It's going to be sections 8, 9, and 10. And it's titled on filial loyalty, on praying, on mercy, on other virtues. So the first one on filial loyalty. Finally, be strong, lest prosperity lift you up too much, or adversity cast you down. Be humble in this life so that God may raise you up in the next. Be truly moderate, and do not punish or condemn anyone immoderately. Be chaste so that you may avoid all the foulness that so resembles the pangs of death. On praying. Pray so that it expels idleness and sloth from you, and confers upon you the combined aid of all virtues in their entirety, enabling you to vanquish all enemies, both apparent and hidden. The last section on mercy and other virtues. All these virtues I have noted above make up the royal crown, and without them, no one is fit to rule here on earth or attain to the heavenly kingdom. So this last lessons that we're getting, this is going to be a two-part lesson, which is first one is long-term success is the middle path. And I want to read that sections where he said, be strong, lest prosperity lift you up too much or adversity cast you down. On that, calls to mind some other verses in the Bible with King Solomon actually praying that God would not bless him too much, that he would forget God, and that he wouldn't be too impoverished, that he would curse God, and kind of finding that balance. Even in discouragement, we need strength, that we should build our life on a strong foundation and walk on that narrow path. And the second part was that prayer is the path for personal growth. I'm going to read this quote again. Pray so that it expels idleness and sloth from you and confers upon you the combined aid of all virtues in their entirety. King Stephen believes that it wasn't just self-effort, self-discipline that would be enough to acquire these virtues, but it was actually prayer would be the main vehicle to grow. And that's something that you don't hear in most self-help books, especially Christian books. It's prayer is part of it. But for King Stephen, king who ruled for 40 years, converted a nation within one generation, he believed that prayer was the number one personal growth practice that we need. And also we need to pray because, like he said, our enemies are both visible, and no matter how disciplined we become or how much we grow, focus on growing and becoming our best self, that's not going to keep at bay our hidden enemies. So in summary, whether you're born into power like King Stephen, or whether you're just normal like me, like the rest of us, still the purpose of every person is to be worthy enough to wear the royal crown. That the royal crown is actually virtues that all of us should strive to. And just a reminder, the steps are having godly motivations, focusing on being motivated for and by the right things, rule and lead with positive qualities, stay away from the negative, the anger, the pride, the envy. That's not going to be helpful. Remember that long-term success is staying on that middle path, and that prayer is the path. It's the number one step for our personal growth. Take the advice from King Stephen, the most Christian, and God will use you, and you'll also obtain the royal crown. So now you know how to live and act like Christian royalty. And if you're in business and you want some more ideas on how to be in business and grow closer to God at the same time, go ahead and watch this video right here to check out some more ideas that I think you'd like.